The strong smell of the hospital room made me feel dizzy as I tried to understand what Margaret was saying. My mother-in-law stood at the end of my bed, looking as perfect as always, telling me big news as if it were no big deal, like talking about the weather. "The retirement home is really nice, Claire," she said, brushing her fancy blazer. "It's much better for someone in your condition." My condition? 2 weeks ago, I had surgery to replace my knee, according to Margaret. This somehow meant I couldn't take care of myself and needed to move to a retirement home. At 58, I wasn't ready for that. "Where's David?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "I want to talk to my husband about this." Margaret's lips pressed together in that look she always gave me when she was upset. "She's been making my life hard for 30 years. David's taking care of the paperwork. He agrees this is the best thing to do. That house is too much for you to handle now." That house, the beautiful old Victorian home I'd spent 20 years fixing up, the place where I raised my kids, where every squeaky floorboard and shiny railing had a story. It was the house I got from my grandmother, and 3 months ago, I put it in a legal trust after I overheard Margaret and her friend Susan talking at a family dinner. "Really?" I said, keeping my voice calm. "And the buyers didn't care that the house wasn't actually David's to sell?" For a second, Margaret's perfect mask slipped. "What do you mean? Of course it was his to sell. You're his wife." I moved a little in the hospital bed, feeling a small pain in my knee. "Actually, Margaret, the house was never in David's name. It was my inheritance, and 3 months ago, I put it in a trust that can't be changed. To sell it, I'd have to be there and sign the papers." She turned pale. "You're lying." David showed me the paperwork. "The paperwork from 15 years ago, maybe," I said, watching her realize the truth. "But things change, Margaret. People change, especially when they start planning to sell their daughter-in-law's house behind her back while she's recovering from surgery. My name is Claire Winters, and I've been married to David for 30 years. He's a good man, but he's always let his mother control him. Margaret has been there every step of the way, questioning how I raised our kids, criticizing my career, and trying to run our lives her way. 4 years, I put up with it for David's sake, smiling through her mean comments and sneaky suggestions. But 3 months ago, during a family dinner, I went to the bathroom and overheard Margaret and her friend Susan talking in the garden. "It's perfect timing," Margaret said, her voice clear through the open window. "With Claire having surgery, David can handle selling the house. It's wasted on her anyway. She's turned it into some weird, artsy mess with all her renovations. The buyers are ready to move fast, and once it's done, we can put her in a better place." I stood there, frozen, as they talked about my future like I was a problem they needed to solve. That night, I called my lawyer, Sarah, and set up a trust for the house. It was done in a few weeks, completely legal and unbreakable. I didn't tell David because I knew his mother would find out if he brought any paperwork home. Now, watching Margaret's plan fall apart, I felt both happy and sad. This wasn't how I wanted things to go, but she gave me no choice. "Does David know?" she asked, her voice shaking. "About this trust?" "He's about to," I said, pressing the call button by my bed. "In fact, let's have a family meeting. Why don't you call him up here, Margaret?" Her hands clenched. "You've ruined everything. We had buyers ready, a nice couple. David already signed the first set of papers." "Those papers don't mean anything without my signature," I said, "and since I never planned to sell my house, your nice couple will have to look somewhere else." The door opened, and a nurse peeked in. "Everything okay, Mrs. Winters?" "Yes, thank you," I said. "Could you call my husband? He's downstairs handling some paperwork. David Winters. Tell him it's important." Margaret paced the room like a trapped animal, her expensive shoes clicking on the floor. I could almost see her trying to figure out how to fix this, how to stay in control. 10 minutes later, David rushed in, looking worried. "Claire, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, patting the bed, "but we need to talk about the house, specifically, how your mother and you were planning to sell it while I was recovering from surgery." David looked shocked, glancing between his mother and me. "Mom, what is she talking about?" Margaret stepped forward, using her calm, fake voice. "David, sweetheart, I was just telling Claire about the great retirement home we found. It's really for the best." "The best for who?" I asked quietly. "For me? Or for you and your country club friends who never thought I was good enough for your son?" "That's not fair," Margaret snapped. "Everything I've done is for this family. That house is too much for you to handle, especially now." "Now that I've had a simple knee surgery?" I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "I'm not helpless, Margaret. I'm not old and weak. I'm not ready for a retirement home, and most importantly, that house isn't yours or David's to sell. David sat down by my bed, looking stunned. Mom, you told me Claire agreed to this. You said she was worried about taking care of the house while she recovered. Oh, David, I sighed, taking his hand. After 30 years, do you still believe everything your mother says? The room was silent. David sat there, trying to understand what had happened. Margaret stood by the window, her back stiff as she stared outside. 3 months ago, I said, my voice steady, I overheard your mother and Susan talking in the garden. They were planning to sell my house while I was in surgery, and they were counting on you, David, to help. David looked up. I didn't, Mom just said you were worried about the house. She said you'd talked about it. I asked softly, when did I ever say I wanted to sell my grandmother's house? When did I ever say I wanted to move to a retirement home? Margaret turned around, her makeup not hiding her anger. This is crazy, David. She's not thinking straight, it's the pain medicine. I'm thinking clearer than I have in years, I said, clear enough to set up a trust 3 months ago to protect the house, clear enough to have my lawyer document every conversation, every time you tried to control this. David stood up, running his hands through his hair. Mom, what did you do? What I had to, Margaret yelled. That house has been a problem for this family for years, the repairs, the work, Claire's crazy changes. My changes that made the house worth 3 times more, I said. The ones that were in Home Design magazine last spring, those so-called ridiculous changes? Margaret's face turned red. It's not about the money, it's about what's best for the family. David, you must see what I see. David spoke slowly. What I see is that you tried to sell my wife's house without her permission. You lied to me, told me Claire agreed. He stopped talking, finally realizing how serious this was. I held David's hand again, squeezing it gently. The trust wasn't about you, David. It was about protecting what's mine, what my grandmother left me. You went behind our backs, Margaret snapped, setting up trusts, making legal plans. Like you went behind my back to sell my house? I asked calmly. The difference is, what I did was legal, what you tried to do was fraud. The word hung in the air like a storm cloud. Margaret's face turned pale. Fraud? David repeated, looking between us. Yes, fraud, I said, trying to sell property you don't own, forging signatures, these are serious legal problems. Margaret, my lawyer has proof of everything. Margaret sat down, her perfect mask finally breaking. You wouldn't dare. Think about what this would do to the family. I've thought about nothing else for 3 months, I said. I've thought about 30 years of your little digs and mean comments. 30 years of you trying to control every part of our lives, 30 years of David stuck in the middle, trying to keep everyone happy. I looked at my husband, seeing the struggle in his eyes. I love you, David, but this has to stop. Your mother needs to understand she can't control everything. She can't decide my future for me. David nodded slowly, something changing in his expression. For the first time in our marriage, I saw him really see his mother for who she was. Mom, he said firmly, you need to leave now. We'll talk about this later. Margaret stood up, smoothing her fancy clothes with shaky hands. David, please. Now, Mom. She left without another word, her heels clicking on the hospital floor until the sound faded. David sat back in the chair by my bed, looking tired. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have seen, should have known. Yes, you should have, I agreed, but we both know your mother is very good at what she does. She's had years of practice. Over the next few days, as I kept recovering, we found out just how much Margaret had been manipulating things. She not only had buyers ready for my house, but she also used David's credit card without his knowledge to put a deposit on a retirement home. She told the buyers I had early dementia, saying that's why the sale had to be done quietly. My lawyer, Sarah, was furious when she heard everything. This is more than just family drama, Claire, she said during her visit. What she did was elder abuse and fraud. We have enough proof to take her to court. But I had other plans. A week later, I left the hospital. David drove me home, to my home, the Victorian house that had caused so much trouble. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw Margaret's car parked on the street. I invited her, I said, seeing David's surprise. We need to clear the air, set some rules. Margaret was waiting on the porch, looking smaller and less powerful than she had in the hospital. She watched as David helped me up the steps, my knee still sore but healing. Inside, I sat in my favorite chair, the one Margaret always said was too old and worn. The afternoon light came through the stained glass windows I'd fixed myself, making colorful patterns on the floor. Before you say anything, I began, I want you to look around. Really look at this house, Margaret. Look at what I built here, what I've fixed. This isn't just a house to me, it's my life, my passion, my home. Margaret's eyes moved around the room, taking in all the details, the mix of old and new that I'd worked so hard on. I won't take legal action, I said, seeing her relax a little, but things are going to change. No more meddling, no more control, no more trying to run our lives. And if I say no? She asked, but her voice didn't have its usual strength. I smiled, reaching for the folder I'd put on the table. Then Sarah will start legal action. The proof of your fraud, the credit card charges, the lies you told the buyers, it will all come out. Your reputation at the country club wouldn't survive that, would it? She flinched, and I saw David hide a smile. But it doesn't have to go that far, I added. You can choose to respect our boundaries, to accept that David and I can make our own decisions. You can choose to be a mother and grandmother, not a controller. The room was quiet as Margaret thought about her options. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. The work you've done, it's really amazing. Coming from Margaret, this was almost an apology. Thank you, I said simply. Would you like a tour? I can show you the new kitchen I'm planning once my knee heals. That afternoon was a turning point. It wasn't perfect, Margaret would always be Margaret, but something important had changed. David stood taller, spoke more firmly. He didn't jump every time his mother called. As for me, I kept recovering, working with my physical therapist in the home gym I'd set up in what used to be the dining room, much to Margaret's dislike. The house changed with me, each room telling a story of strength and new beginnings. 6 months later, Home Design magazine came back, this time to feature my home office. The photographer took a picture of me at my desk, the stained glass windows casting colorful light on my silver hair. The article was called, Victorian Revival, How One Woman's Vision Changed More Than Just a House. Margaret even came to the magazine party, bringing champagne and only making one small comment about the unusual wallpaper in the bathroom. Progress comes slowly, after all. As I watched her talking to the magazine editor, actually complimenting my work, David put his arm around me. You know, he said quietly, putting the house in trust was smart, but not telling me, that must have been hard. I leaned into him, thankful for my healing knee and the man who had finally found his voice. Sometimes, I said, you have to protect what's yours, even from the people you love. He nodded, finally understanding. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my favorite old chair, watching the sunset turn the sky pink and gold. The house creaked around me, its familiar sounds comforting after all these years. Margaret had tried to take this from me, to decide my future without asking, but in doing so, she made us all face the problems that had shaped our family for 30 years. Sometimes, you have to almost lose something to realize how much you'll fight to keep it. I touched the arm of my chair, feeling the soft, worn fabric. In the end, this wasn't just about a house, it was about standing up for myself, protecting what matters, and finding my voice even when others try to silence it. And as I sat there in my imperfect, beautiful, hard-earned home, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about living well on your own terms, in a house that tells your story. Every squeaky floor, every fixed window, every unique choice that makes it truly yours. The next morning, I got a text from Margaret, the wallpaper in the bathroom, it's starting to grow on me. I smiled as I typed my reply, just wait until you see what I have planned for the conservatory. Because that's the thing about houses, families, and life, there's always room for change, for growth, for new beginnings. You just have to be brave enough to start.